I grew up in a large family. My parents had 8 kids. Growing up in my large family, everybody had somebody. I had my dad. I protected my younger brother, but my dad was my closest friend. Siblings are not always the nicest to each other, and I was more than a bit odd, so I was not well liked. I wasn't close to any of my siblings except my younger brother. I read books instead of playing with toys. I was tall for my age, so many kids in my neighborhood were a bit too intimidated to play sports with me. Instead, I followed my dad around as much as I could on Saturdays and Sundays after church. He was a minister. He trusted me to teach the second grade Sunday school class, even though I was only in the fifth grade myself, and he showed a lot of pride in my academic focus. I went with him when he went to houses to counsel couples. I would watch the kids. While my brothers and sisters were busy being kids and teens, I was with my dad, or reading. All that changed when I was 11 years old, just before my 12th birthday. I was walking home from school with one of my friends, and when I turned the corner, I saw an ambulance in front of our house about 2 blocks away. I didn't think much of it. I thought that a church member had fallen ill while visiting my dad. I arrived home to find that it was my dad who had fallen ill. Within a few weeks, my mom told our family that my dad had cancer and that he would not live much longer. Over the next 6 months, I spent a lot of time traveling with my mom to cancer centers. We got snowed in a few times, and I found myself sleeping in my dad's room to keep him company. I skipped school a lot the rest of the year to stay with my dad. He told me his stories. He talked of the challenges he lived through in his life and the ones I should avoid. I understood later that he was giving me a long goodbye. Before that time, I was emotionally tough at times and utterly clueless at others. I did not cry much until then. But during those 6 months leading up to his death, I cried a lot. I was not one to cry in front of people. I knew I could never let my younger brother see me cry, or it would upset him too much. And so I would go for a run every day and found it was the best time to cry. Those 6 months put me face to face with death and the afterlife. My dad's time was coming to an end, and I could not avoid the questions raised about my own faith. That was the year I started to study the Bible. I needed some comfort. My heart was breaking, and I did not know how I would survive my dad's passing because I felt that once he was gone, I would have no one. My dad died in June of that year. He waited for my aunt to arrive to comfort my mother, and then he'd let go. The day he died, we were preparing to go to the hospital to see him. A broken alarm on the kitchen stove went off loudly. Not only was it broken, it was unplugged. I knew in my heart that my dad was gone. I felt panicked. When we arrived at the hospital to the news that he had, in fact, died at the same time the stove alarm started ringing, I remember being led into a waiting room that was next to the room he was in at the Veterans Hospital in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Everyone started crying, but I found I could not. I had to see him, so I slipped into his room to see his face. I remember the way the room smelled. I remember what his face looked like. I remember seeing a shadow waving over his face. I knew it was my dad waving goodbye to me. It was only then that I could cry, alone, holding my dad's hand. I felt like I was suffocating because I could not catch my breath. I remember hearing someone come into the room and feeling the need to not show my tears. My heart broke, even more as I watched my sisters and little brothers cry. My mother had silent tears. She held her head down as I held onto her side. While helping care for my dad as he died, she had become the friend to replace the one I had just lost. My dad made a promise to my mom. He told her that if God would not forbid it, he would let her know he was okay. Over the next month, we would see my dad many times or see small things that allowed him to keep his word. The last memory I have of my dad was of him sitting on the bed as he always did after work. He looked up at me, and then he was gone. I never saw him again, but I knew that he had reached us from the afterlife. That is why I know that our life does not end with our time here. My dad showed that. From his wave goodbye to the final time I saw his face, he wanted all of us to know that things did not end with death.